During 1952, following the end of World War II and the growing tensions between the NATO allies and the Soviet Union, it wasn't uncommon for simulated naval war games to take place throughout different points controlled by NATO. What was uncommon, however, were the series of reports surrounding unidentified flying objects, flying saucers, and encounters with what could only be described as extraterrestrial technologies. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be going over one of the strangest wargame disruptions, known as Operation Mainbrace, and what it could mean for the recovered documents surrounding military personnel and alien encounters. Referred to as Operation Mainbrace, during the month of September back in 1952, there was roughly a 2-week period in which a series of unidentified flying objects were sighted. This was reported by countless civilians and military personnel. According to the documents that would later be dubbed Operation Mainbrace, the UFO sightings began on the 14th of September during a series of NATO exercises known as Exercise Mainbrace. This was only a few months after the sightings of UFO crafts were made over in Washington, D.C. in the United States during the same year. The Exercise Mainbrace included more than 200 naval ships, 1,000 planes, and 80,000 soldiers from several NATO countries. This was with the purpose of practicing war game-styled manoeuvres and would better prepare the NATO allies for a believed to be eventual European attack from the Soviet Union. During the exercise, however, ships were alerted by top Pentagon officials to keep an eye out for extraterrestrial sightings in the area. When later asked to clarify what they meant, the Pentagon officials claimed that their reports were filed in a joking manner and weren't military confirmation of the existence of extraterrestrial life. However, this is a behaviour uncharacteristic of naval intelligence and the British government as a whole. Regardless of whether or not the report was filed in a joking manner, a series of unidentified flying objects would be sighted by military personnel and civilians between the 13th and 25th of September. This in turn disrupted the exercises and forced the Royal Air Force and NATO allies to treat flying saucer reports with grave severity. The first Mainbrace encounter took place on the 13th of September, when the naval captain, running a Danish destroyer, claimed to have spotted a triangular-shaped unidentified flying object moving across the sky. It was hitting speeds that even their most powerful jets couldn't maintain. The crew of the Danish destroyer confirmed these sightings as well, with the Lieutenant Commander Schmidt-Jensen claiming that collected data showed the craft was moving consistently at 900 miles per hour. Even though the sighting took place at night, the entirety of the crew could see the craft as it emitted a bright blue glow. The second report surrounding alien disruptions was made by the American-owned Uss Franklin De Roosevelt. According to the American newspaper, there was a report that a man named Wallace Litwin began to notice many of the crew members running all throughout the ship in a heightened state of alert. Fearing that the exercises had become an attack from the Soviet Union, he began looking for a source of the panic. This was when he noticed a large commotion on the deck of the ship. Wallace Litwin wrote that several pilots, flight crew members, and top military officials were positioned on the deck, barking orders and pointing at a silver sphere in the sky that appeared to silently hover over the ship. It also continued to follow the USS Franklin De Roosevelt during its exercise. Reporter Wallace Litwin quickly took 4 high-quality, coloured photos of the round silver object before it disappeared. When questioned surrounding the images and the legitimacy of the claim, the United States government offered an explanation. They said the craft was nothing more than a weather balloon that had temporarily dipped down near the battleship during the war games. These claims would be put into question, as reporter Wallace Litwin recounts that shortly after taking the images of the craft, he'd gone below deck and told his fellow newspaper correspondents that he had just shot a flying saucer. This claim of military action quickly alerted the ship's executive officer, who investigated the claims himself and found that the craft was genuinely not a weather balloon. According to the executive officer, investigations had shown that a weather balloon hadn't been released that day. When the officer radioed the Midway, the only other NATO-approved ship in the vicinity, the ship also confirmed that no weather balloons were in the air or unaccounted for. Litwin would write the following report, saying, "In other words, the sky above this NATO fleet were very carefully observed, and nothing flew around overhead unobserved. But I knew that I had taken a picture of what looked like a large ping-pong ball, 10 feet over my head." The US Project Blue Book UFO investigation team would do a follow-up investigation. They provided the report that the object moved too fast to have been a weather balloon, even though it resembled a balloon in some ways, and was in no way identical to any known weather balloons in use by any organisation in the world, government or private. One of the most notable accounts of these UFO sightings would take place on the 19th of September at 11 AM. This was when a large silver-coloured disc-shaped object began following a Royal Air Force Gloucester Meteor. Not only did the pilot of the Gloucester Meteor confirm his sighting with a number of military ground crew working at the RAF station, but several additional reports had also been filed by observers on the ground. This was alongside civilian reports of the unidentified flying object trailing the Gloucester Meteor. The craft was described as being a silvery circular object and began to descend in a swinging pendulum motion, similar to that of a falling leaf. Before the craft reached the ground, however, observers commented that it rotated on its own axis and shot off at an incredible sudden speed. They noted that it looked more like a shooting star. Royal Air Force Flight Lieutenant John Kilburn with the 269th Squadron commented, saying the following statement: "I've never seen such a phenomenon before. The movements of the object were not identifiable with anything I've ever seen in the air." Despite efforts made by the British government, the story of the Topcliffe sighting was leaked to the press and made the headline for the front page edition of the September 20th copy of the Yorkshire Evening Press, and the headlines of the September 21st copy of the Sunday Dispatch. So what do you think of all these impossible to explain sightings of unidentified objects and extraterrestrial encounters? What do you think military personnel from NATO allies witnessed during these exercises? Be sure to leave your questions and answers in the comment section below and help us by growing this community, whilst working to solve these unexplained mysteries. And once again, thank you for watching.